Hello everyone and welcome to the New York Empoleon's Week 4 battle of the GBA Season 9. We are taking on Randy and the Houston Team Rockets, one of my favorite names. I just love it. It's so creative. This week in this season. Now, we did face him in the GBA D League last season. It was not the season he made finals, but he did make finals the season before that. So very talented battler. If I'm not mistaken, he has just run himself through pretty much everyone he's played so far. And I think that part of the reason he's doing that is because people are prepping for him the instinctive and intuitive way, not the way that's actually going to beat his team. His team is deep, and I will go over it and I will talk about why I am bringing the mons I'm bringing, because I think it does require a little bit of explanation here. So his team is Yveltal, Clefable, I never know how to say that. Someone's going to tell me I'm saying it wrong. Yveltal, 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 I don't know. Clefable, Infernape, Suicune, Roserade, Jolteon, Metagross, Porygon 2, Hippowdon, Lycanroc, Midday, and Megalodios, with Infernape and Lycanroc being his two possible Z users. Okay, let's go over this. First thing that's easily noticeable by anybody is that his two Uber picks, Yveltal and Megalodios, are his two removers. They're the only hazard removal that he has. That being said, his strategy so far, at least from the battles that I've watched, has been set up hazards of his own, force you to remove them so he doesn't have to worry about it, and while you're removing, he's getting free turns to just set up, since almost every one of his mons is a setup sweeper in some way. Clefable loves setup. Infernape, if you give it a turn, can set up. You can rock, Calm Mind, Megalodios. You can rock Suicune, just start Crocoon things. So, one option for teams is to run things like Roar. That doesn't work when you're the one being hazard stacked against in the early game. Another option is what I've decided to go with, which is slow his mons using Thunder Wave, not other statuses as much, and then try to pick him down once his big threats are neutralized. So you're going to see throughout my entire team that my plan to defeat Randy is very different than everyone else. Also, because Jolteon has a particularly bad matchup against me, that gives me pretty much free Thunder Waves, since Hippowdon does not come in on any of my special attackers, and pretty much my entire team is also special. Not to mention Dialga, Donphan, they don't mind the sand, so he may or may not even bring Hippowdon. His team that I'm expecting is his biggest threats. Yveltal, Clefable, Infernape, Suicune, Megalodios, and then one of Roserade, Metagross, Lycanroc, things like that. Metagross is his really only check to Lele, I mean, really only hard counter to Lele, I should say. He has other checks to it, but not much wants to take Lele's dual stab. So we're going to get there when we get there, but the first thing I want to talk about is going to be me rocking out with Thunder Wave, as well as the Metronome on Dialga. Dialga this week is going to be modest, max special attack. It is going to be designed to smash things stupid hard. Flash Cannon, Earth Power, and Ice Beam hits his entire team neutrally at worst, and pretty much everything super effectively, with a couple of exceptions. I thought about running Draco, but the thing is, if I was running Draco, the coverage I'd have to give up would either be Thunder Wave or Flash Cannon, and I'd rather Thunder Wave the Clefable on the switch-in than click Draco and do nothing. Not to mention, Flash Cannon gives me coverage for that Clefable, for instance, as well as the Lycanroc, better than Earth Power slightly. And let's not forget that I'm running the Metronome. The reason is he could go Megalodios, which takes about 45% from an Ice Beam the first time, and then he can start Calm Minding and recovering and trying to stall out my Ice Beam. Metronome will stop that from happening. It will eventually take out the Megalodios at +1 if his goal is to just recover stall it. I will slowly be doing more than 50%, meaning he will eventually have to just let that thing go down or switch out, forcing me to change the move that I'm going for. Not to mention, if he starts Calm Minding, I can Thunder Wave that, make it slower, and then Ice Beam him before he can recover stall me, which is actually huge. A lot of my mons this week are going to be prepped to not necessarily outspeed the Jolteon. It doesn't threaten me as much, but the next mon right here is a Choice Scarfed Tapu Lele, and this thing is going to outspeed Jolteon by 1 point, as long as it's not Quick Feed Jolteon, obviously, and that's the speed that I'm running, which allowed me to run Modest, which is super nice. Now, I do have the Nature's Madness on a Choice Scarf set, because his switch-in likely is going to be Metagross. Either that, or some sort of super specially defensive Clefable. Both of those don't appreciate 50% on switch-in, especially Metagross, which has no real reliable recovery. And then in the future, this thing can chip things down. Now, Thunderbolt's amazing coverage for this. Again, if I'm not expecting the Jolteon to come, and Hippowdon never switches into a Tapu Lele pretty much ever, unless he knows that I'm Scarfed and Scarfed into Thunderbolt, then I can hit the Yveltal, I can hit the Metagross neutrally, I can hit the Suicune. So Energy Ball was tempting, Shadow Ball was tempting, but it failed to hit all three of those major threats neutrally. And then Psyshock can allow me to hit some sort of Calm Minding, Clefable, or Suicune. It only does about 40% to a Fizdef Suicune, which is not great. But if he is, like, I could always just click Nature's Madness for a little while and force out that Suicune in a different way like that if he does start Calm Minding, which is really, really scary. So I do have the Zapdos to handle the Suicune a little bit. Discharge, again, gives me some sort of paralysis cover. Roost, Volt Switch, and Defog. This thing can always switch into Roserade. It's not as specially defensive as I'd want it. It's more physically bulky to be able to check the Metagross and a physical Infernape, as well as a Sucker Punch Yveltal. But this thing can switch into... The reason that I'm running it physically defensive is because I also have Static. And you guys are going to see this trend here. I am Static, I am Thunderwave, I am Discharge. I am trying to slow his team down so that when the time comes for my sweepers to come in the end game, they are able and ready to do so. Discharge gives me the ability to click an Electric-type move while staying in. I recognize that I have 0 ways to hit Hippowdon, which is one of his hazard setters. And I also recognize that I only hit Roserade with resisted attacks, which is his other real hazard setter. So that's not ideal, but this thing also doesn't mind switching out on something like a Hippowdon that is potentially going to set, because it's going to go for like a rock type attack or toxic or something like that. Next up we have Ditto. Ditto is going to be Quick Claw again this week. I ran Scarf in some of my mocks and it ended up just being, it got bodied by, you know, his ridiculous switch-ins to everything. So by running Quick Claw, I still have a 70% chance to outspeed everything. If he's paralyzed, I still outspeed him anyway, regardless, which is part of why that's really important to me. I thought about running a different item, but because I'm not 100% sure if I'll be able to get rid of his hazards and stuff, I'm not going to run a Focus Sash on this week or anything like that. But paralyzing things is going to be huge, as well as giving me access to their movesets or their setup. For one thing, Suicune could definitely come with Roar itself, or with just a Crocoon, and this thing being able to switch in and take the setup of the Suicune would be really, really nice. There's not much more to say about Ditto other than the fact that it stops his major setup sweepers, which is most of his team. And next up we have the Beedrill, which is almost a supportive Beedrill this week. U-turn, Knockoff, Toxic Spikes, and Roost. One reason I'm running Roost is because Hippowdon is a really annoying thing for this to deal with, and so Roost allows me not to become Whirlwind fodder for Hippowdon, so that I can always, if he gets 25% from Rocks, 25% from 3 layers of Spikes from Roserade, let's say, I Roost, I go back to full, and then he goes for a Whirlwind with his Hippowdon, and then I am able to, whatever comes in, hopefully handle the Hippowdon or take some damage there. But this thing is able to stay healthy through the rocks and stuff like that. I don't have Poison Jab, which means Clefable actually does wall me, but he doesn't know that, so that's actually going to be what's going to be saving me a little bit, and Knockoff predictions on the Clefable is actually going to be helpful. T-Spikes are only useful if I've already paralyzed the things I want to paralyze. So T-Spikes are actually great for the Hippowdon, for the Suicune, even for the Infernape if it gets there. But I want to paralyze like half his team before I even consider putting up T-Spikes if I can do that. That way, or kill the Roserade. Obviously, if the Roserade's still alive, I'm not setting up any T-Spikes, I'm just clicking U-turn. But most of the time, this thing is going to be able to just click U-turn or Knockoff and proceed to wear his team down, because again, it's a battle of attrition, and trying to beat him by wearing him down with status, you will lose. Trying to beat him by wearing him down with hazards, you will lose. So win the war of attrition is a creative puzzle against his team, and I think this is the way that I'm going to do it. And finally, we do have my almost dedicated lead. Pretty much that's what this is going to be. It is a very supportive superior. Taunt, Glare, Light Screen, and Knockoff. I did decide to go with Contrary over Overgrowth since I wasn't running a Grass type attack anyway, and because his only 2 forms of removal are his Defoggers, so I might be able to get a +1 evasion if he does decide to do that. Not to mention, there's other ways that things like Clefable going for Moonblast or whatever that why not just have that. Now, Glare, you guys have heard this, a couple of times this video. This is a dedicated lead because it can glare anything that he leads with, pretty much. It outspeeds everything except Jolteon on his team, and the only thing I'd be worried about is if he leads the Yveltal and it is Scarfed. But even then, if he is Scarfed and Oblivion Wings, then I at least know. If he leads Infernape to try to set up Stealth Rocks, I have the Akaberry, I can take any one hit. So that is really, really important, and I'm able to click Taunt or Glare on the Infernape right away. And if he's not Scarfed, I can Glare him for free. And if he is Scarfed, then any clicks like Stealth Rocks, then I either glare or taunt or whatever. Taunt also stops things like his Roserade from being a lead, things like his Megalodios from setting up, things like his Clefable from setting up right off the bat. So that's really good. And then also because his major threats like Yveltal, like Clefable, like Suicune, like Megalodios are special, I decided to go with Light Screen and Knockoff instead of Leech Seed just because the Roserade is a pretty free switch into this thing. And Light Screen allows me to take a Sludge Bomb very well. And then knock off whatever item it has, like the Black Sludge or the Focus Sash or whatever. So you're going to notice I am not running Rocks despite his team not having great removal. I am not running Setup because I don't think that his team can be beat 1v1 in Setup. I think what you need to do against Randy's team, and this is a kind of a test, you know, like it may or may not work, but what you need to do against Randy's team is wear him down before or during the time that he's wearing you down, but keeping your checks in the back. Scarf Lele is a win con to the extreme. If I can get rid of Metagross, he has one resist on his entire team to Moonblast, and it's Roserade, and that thing does not appreciate a Psyshock. So Metagross is the only thing. If he doesn't even bring it, then he's got the Porygon 2 and the Roserade that can maybe take hits, and that's about it. And that's, you know, like, that's fine. And I do have the Superior that can come in on the Porygon 2. It will download into physical attack if he does run download, and then I can glare it, I can taunt it, whatever, to try to stop it from doing its things, or just knock it off. So lots of knockoff, lots of status, but paralysis, not toxic or anything else. That's really the plan here. We'll see how it goes. If I lose to Randy, he's undefeated right now, and my season has been hacked as heck. We've had a couple of battles. I think so far I've seen like 8 crits in the first 3 weeks against me, and like 2 flinches that have really mattered in the, like, actually determined at least differential end games already in the season. So far, if Randy doesn't get 4 crits in a flinch, I'm 1-0 in games in which my opponent doesn't get 4 crits in a flinch. I'm 0-2 in games in which they do. So we'll see how it goes. Randy has been hacking his opponents a little bit too, so we'll see. This is not going to go well. I'm confident though. I feel like the team is exactly the team that I need in order to make sure that I have the best chance to beat Randy. And it's got to be a lot of things he's not ready for, and I hope that's the case. If he brings Jolteon, we've got problems. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow with the battle against Randy in Week 4. And if you, again, if I didn't say it, if you haven't checked him out, go check him out. I think he's undefeated, so if you want to check out a very talented battler, make sure you check out his channel. Link is in the description below. And with that, I will see you guys back here tomorrow with that battle. Take care, everybody.